I want to thank y'all again for being here. We are ready for lesson 6, David and Goliath. I usually make that pretty big. Is that big enough? All right. So we're ready for lesson 6, David and Goliath. This is 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 1 through 11. Now the Philistines gathered their armies together to battle and were gathered at Soko, which belongs to Judah. They encamped between Soko and Azekah in Ephes-dammim. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together, and they encamped in the valley of Elah, and drew up in battle array against the Philistines. The Philistines stood on a mountain on one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, with a valley between them. And a champion went out from the camp of the Philistines, named Goliath, from Gath, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. He had a bronze helmet on his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of bronze. And he had bronze armor on his legs, and a bronze javelin between his shoulders. Now the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his iron spearhead weighed 600 shekels, and a shield bearer went before him. Then he stood and cried out to the armies of Israel and said to them, "Why have you come out to line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and you the servants of Saul? Choose a man for yourselves, and let him come down to me. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us." And the Philistines said, "I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together." When Saul and all Israel heard these words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. So then if we look at question number 1, where were the Philistines encamped? And if you can pronounce it better than me, then by all means. Yes, Soko in Judah, or between Soko and Azekah, right? And it says in Ephes-dammim. I don't know what that is. Where was, or wait, I may have messed that up. I'm sorry. So where was Israel encamped?
Elah.
They were in the valley of Elah, is that right? Oh, okay. So I didn't mess that up. Good. All right. So they were in the valley of Elah. That's right. Now, 2 is the more interesting question in a way from just a physical oddity standpoint. How tall was Goliath?
He's pretty tall.
Right. He's pretty tall. Yes.
9.5 feet.
I had he was 9 feet, and I had 9 inches, but that span may vary. I don't know.
9 foot, 9 inches.
Okay. That's what I had too.
Okay.
Because a cubit is like 1.5 feet, so it's like 18 inches. Now that's rough. I don't think that's exact, but it's, for us, that's close. And then a span is like 9 inches. It's like half a cubit. So that's where we're getting that from. I guess that's where you got that from, Cookie?
I had heard it someplace and I wrote it down.
Okay, cool. No, that's great. That's great. I forget where I had to find that myself right now, but I looked it up somewhere.
I've got the pounds of the armor too.
Okay, how much was that?
273 pounds.
Oh my goodness, okay. I had it was 125, but okay, that's fine. You may be right, because
Wrong, I don't know.
I don't remember looking at the shekel stuff all that well. Do you have how heavy the spear, the spearhead was?
No, I didn't get that.
15 pounds.
Okay, that's what I had for that. That came out to be about 15 pounds, so okay. But that's okay. And remember, he wasn't alone either. He had a shield bearer. That's kind of cheating, ain't it? I want you to send somebody out to fight me, but I'm going to have my little buddy here in the way, you know. It seemed to me like that's kind of cheating. He's already a huge guy. He wasn't the only one that ever had somebody do that, though, but nonetheless. Okay, so it says describe his armor and weaponry. Well, they said it was bronze, right? And so it would be heavy, though. To Cookie's point, it would be heavy. And there was some heavy old armor. I don't know how heavy all that was.
I think the helmet was over 9 pounds.
Oh, okay. The helmet might have been over 9 pounds. I don't know.
I got on the internet and looked it up.
Okay. Well, he was a big guy, so I don't, it would be a lot. Now, let's see. Do we have anything on? Okay, by comparison, Saul's armor was probably only about 45 to 60 pounds. So Goliath was really a big guy, and he did have a lot of equipment. He had that big spear, and his shield bearer is carrying, I guess, his shield for him. So let's see.
I'm trying to visualize what 9.5 feet tall would be.
How high is the ceiling?
Well,
Sometimes
sometimes,
the speaker.
well, your ceiling at home is what? 6 feet tall?
Probably 7.
Normal?
Probably 7.
Normal 8?
Probably 7.
Normally 8. Okay. Well, I'm not 6 feet. I'm a couple of inches short, so it would be a bit taller, quite a bit taller than me. Well, I remember when I was a kid, I saw a guy that was 7 feet tall. Now, I was a little kid. He was huge to me. So this would be like that, I would
See
imagine.
that line across there underneath the register? That'd be about 9 feet, wouldn't it?
Is that like 3 feet or more above my head?
Yeah.
Okay. Then that's close at least.
Yeah.
He might be even taller than that, though. So
That high plus 9 inches on top.
yeah, plus 9 inches. Yes.
Almost a nose, but
So yeah, if you imagined half of me again, and then extra, that would be him.
yeah.
So it'd have to be half of me and extra because I'm not even 6 feet.
And when you're a little child and you're up against an adult, that's what they appear to you.
They all appear to be giants. Yeah. Yeah.
And we're not supposed to be careful, but if there's somebody that's bigger than us and they're being bullied, it kind of scares us.
Right, and he sounds, from what he says, he sounds like he is kind of bullying them and pushing them, and he knows they're scared of him, and he wants to keep them scared of him, right? The way he sounds. To me, anyway.
He's not only big, but he's pretty big around, too.
Oh, okay.
Whereas if his head held a 9-pound helmet, how big would his head have to be to hold that weight?
Well, that's a good point because he wouldn't just be taller, he'd also be wider than me, right? Yeah. So there would be a big difference. He would be a huge guy all the way around. And we were talking about NBA players the other night, and most people, when they get really tall, they aren't that athletic. So like the guys you see playing basketball that are very athletic, they're like the cream of the crop, the very top. So Goliath, to be that tall and be able to get around and do stuff, he must have been pretty athletic to be such a big guy. It would be difficult. Your bones and your joints and everything, when you're that big, you have so much weight and there's so much, it's so different. It'd be very hard for them. That's my thought on the matter. So
I would almost think he'd be like a Rosie Greer. He was big and tall.
yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, he was big, yeah. All right. Does anybody have anything else on Goliath? Yeah.
I remember one time I was playing basketball,
Huh?
and the center had a lineup, you always put the tallest guy up there.
Yep.
And they had this big, tall guy. He was really tall. I don't know how he was. I would say probably close to 7 foot. And this other guy, about your size, less than 6 foot. And they got sitting there just looking down at him. And when they threw that ball up, he must have springs in his feet because he went up and got that ball, knocked it away.
Oh, okay.
So you're talking about, sometimes they're not athletic.
Yep. That's true. Some of them are not. Some of them are just really tall, and that gives them certain advantages, but they're not as athletic. Yep. Yeah. All right. Okay, so question number 3. What was Goliath's challenge to Israel? Wait.
Number one was going to be servant to the other.
Well, right. He said, send somebody out, and whoever wins against me and your person, whoever you send out, the winner will, no, the loser will serve the winner. There we go.
Yeah.
So,
But if David wins, then they have to serve the Israelites. It was
But-
turnabout, wasn't it?
huh?
Wasn't it a turnabout? Like,
He said that if one of the Israelites came out and won, that they would serve the Israelites, but that if they lost, then the Israelites would serve them. So yes, that is true.
He was very sure of himself.
Yeah, I believe he was, and I think the Philistines were as well, as we see later. How many times did he issue this challenge? 2 times a day for 40 days. That surprised me when I reread that and realized that this guy was marching out there every day for over a month, issuing this challenge. I don't know, it just kind of surprised me. I didn't know what to think of that. It sounds kind of crazy, but for 40 days, twice a day, he went out and did that.
And it doesn't seem like anyone challenged him. So as time went on, he got more and more arrogant and more confident,
Oh, that's true. He would.
mocked them and made fun of them because they were stupid.
Yeah, so he was, as he went on, he probably did get more arrogant, more sure of himself. And what was their reaction? This is the last part of this question. What was the Israelites' reaction to this?
They were cowards in fear.
They were afraid. They were afraid, and they did not come out to meet his challenge, and he knew that. And I think that also probably made him bolder, like you were saying. And to do that for 40 days with no response, I don't understand that. I would have gotten aggravated at some point and said, let's just kill somebody. I mean, but that's me. I'm just saying. I don't know if I'd have the patience to sit there for that, you know. Anyway, I wasn't there. Does anybody have anything else on that before we move on?
I have a question.
Okay, what?
I have a question. Where are you coming up with 40 days?
Oh, okay. Let's find that. That was here.
16? Did we not read down through verse 11?
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? That's down in verse 16, so I'm getting ready to read that. But it says, and the Philistine drew near and presented himself 40 days, morning and evening. So I just hadn't read that part yet. But it's kind of funny. They put that question here before we had actually read the answer. So sorry about that.
What verse did you say?
16.
18?
16.
16.
Yeah. 1-6.
Okay. I'm certainly not reading it down through verse 11.
No, I'm sorry. I should have noticed that and had us do that question later, but I didn't notice that it was out of sync there. Okay. All right. So I'm going to read verses 12 through 30 here. Now David was the son of that Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah, whose name was Jesse, and who had 8 sons. And the man was old, advanced in years, in the days of Saul. The 3 oldest sons of Jesse had gone to follow Saul to the battle. The names of his 3 sons who went to the battle were Eliab, the firstborn, next to him Abinadab, and the third Shammah. David was the youngest, and the 3 oldest followed Saul. But David occasionally went and returned from Saul. Remember, he was going and playing the harp for him, to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. And the Philistine drew near and presented himself. Now, and the Philistine here they're referring to as Goliath, presented himself 40 days, morning and evening. Then Jesse said to his son David, "Take now for your brothers an ephah of this dried grain and these 10 loaves, and run to your brothers at the camp. And carry these 10 cheeses to the captain of their 1,000, and see how your brothers fare, and bring back news of them." Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. So David rose early in the morning, left the sheep with a keeper, and took the things, and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the camp as the army was going out to the fight and shouting for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines had drawn up in battle array, army against army. And David left his supplies in the hand of the supply keeper, ran to the army, and came and greeted his brothers. Then as he talked with them, there was the champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, coming up from the armies of the Philistines, and he spoke according to the same words, so David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him and were dreadfully afraid. So the men of Israel said, "Have you seen this man who has come up? Surely he has come up to defy Israel, and it shall be that the man who kills him, the king will enrich with great riches, will give him his daughter, and give his father's house exemption from taxes in Israel." Then David spoke to the men who stood by him, saying, "What shall be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" And the people answered him in this manner, saying, "So shall it be done for the man who kills him." Now Eliab, his oldest brother, heard when he spoke to the men, and Eliab's anger was aroused against David, and he said, "Why did you come down here? And with whom have you left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and the insolence of your heart, for you have come down to see the battle." And David said, "What have I done now? Is there not a cause?" Then he turned from him toward another and said the same thing. And these people answered him as the first ones did. So that was verse 30 there. And if we look, we're ready for question number 4. So, who was Jesse? David's father. That's probably the easiest answer. David's father. And where was he from? Bethlehem of Judah. And of what tribe was he a member? Judah. Right. Okay. Gotcha. Okay. So he was an Ephraimite or Ephrathite, the way they said it, I believe. Yes, grandson of Ruth and Boaz, right? So that's important to remember, just to keep that whole lineage in mind. So can we name the sons of Jesse? Yeah, you have to cheat to get the rest of them, and I had to look around. He had 8 sons, and you can get some of the names, like the one here listed is Shammah, right? The third one. But he's listed elsewhere, I think it's in Chronicles, as Shemiah. Slightly different spelling, but they believe it's the same guy. And so we have the 3 here, Eliab, Abinadab, and Shammah or Shemiah. And then there's also, it's not Nathaniel, it's like Nathanael, Radai, Ozem, and then we have David, but they don't tell you who the other son is. And it's thought that perhaps he passed away, but I don't know that for sure. If you look at 1 Chronicles chapter 27, verse 18, it tells some of this. It mentions that Elihu, one of David's brothers. It mentions him here, and he perhaps died in battle. So Elihu would probably have been his name if we're understanding. You read that in context, it makes a little more sense, but it was mentioning some people who were in the military. So Elihu, I said a minute ago I didn't think we had his name, but I think Elihu was his name. And if he died in battle with no children, for them, I guess that would be a big loss if he wasn't married and had no children. I don't know how they would look at that. But nonetheless, because they were big, in their family and keeping the family going always. But that was the only thing I could find for another son. Does anybody have anything else on the sons? All right. So, moving on to question number 6. Who was the youngest son of Jesse? David. And what did he normally do? What was his normal task? Shepherd. He tended the sheep, right? Okay. And where had his father instructed him to go?
To his brothers to see how they were.
Yep, to check on his brothers at the camp, right? At the military camp. And you'll notice he also sent some cheese for the guys in charge of their, I don't know if you want to call it a regiment or whatever their division was. Whoever was in charge of their 1,000, he sent like a cheese for those guys, for some cheese. And I think that was a little bit to stay on, you want to stay on that guy's good side, and maybe that would benefit your sons. And I don't know their traditions, but that's how that kind of came across to me. It's like, yeah, take something over to those guys too, Let's stay on their good side. So, okay. And you answered the why because he went to see how they were doing, see how they were faring, and come back and report that to Jesse, right? So if we look at question number 7, what was David's reaction when he heard Goliath's challenge?
It was pretty flattered because he said, well, what's going to happen if somebody kills him?
He did ask that. That's true. He asked what does somebody get if they kill this guy, if they kill this booger?
Takes away the reproach from Israel. So.
Yep. Right? Anything else?
Verse 32, he says, don't let anyone get upset. He's like, I'm going to go fight him.
Right. Now that's in verse 32 when he's talking to Saul. Back here, the way he's asking this, in a way, it almost implies that he thinks, he's implying, I think, in a way that the army here is being a little cowardly because they're like, he's like, this guy should not be defying the armies of God. Or maybe not cowardly, maybe he's just accusing them of not having enough faith to go out and fight this guy.
It was what he called his uncircumcised defy the armies of the living God.
Right.
It's like he doesn't pay attention to his size.
Right. He's not thinking of the size. He's not, that's not what he's wondering. That's not what's got his attention, I guess. He's,
That shows a lot of faith.
It does. That's right. It does. Because he's thinking, surely we should just be taking this guy down and moving on. But, okay, so then how did his brother respond to him?
Like he's a little kid.
Like he was kind of mad at his little brother. He's like, what are you doing here? Leave me alone. Go on.
You have big brothers and,
Yep.
you understand that.
Yep. If you have brothers, and I had both. I had an older brother and a younger brother, so I know the whole circuit. It's like, yeah.
I have 4 of them.
Yep. So that's the way that works, I know. Let's see.
Kind of accused him of slacking off and not doing his job of taking care of the sheep. Like, why are you here? You're not doing what you're
Yeah, he did accuse him of that, didn't he? And we were looking up, and we were talking about stuff, and we were trying to figure some of this out. David, to be in their army or to serve in their war or their battle, you had to be about 20 years old. Because if you look back at Numbers, I don't have this right here, but Numbers chapter 1, verse 45, they were supposed to be 20 years old to go to war for Israel. So David would have been at least under 20 at this point. Now, he may have been as young as 15. We don't know. He may have been a little older. Could have been 18. I don't know. But something like that. Because he wasn't with them and he wasn't with the army. And David doesn't sound like somebody who wouldn't have been with the army, really. Yes.
I started to think, he said, what are you doing here? Well, his father sent him with supplies, and it's like, they're not very thankful for that. They're just putting him down.
Right. Well, yeah, I think David's question kind of implied, kind of something bad, and Eliab got mad. But yes, he was kind of putting him down, trying to put him in his place. So, and then how did David reply to that?
What did I do now?
Yes, what have I...
You're blaming me for something. What did I do this time?
Yep, this is a little brother. What have I done now? Is there not a good reason, or is there not cause? So, yeah, that was how he responded.
And I even thought, like, you won't even let me ask a question.
Well, yeah, you don't even want me to ask questions. Can I not ask questions? Is there not reason for me to be asking what's going on? Yeah. Yeah, that may have been what he meant by, is there not cause? Is there not reason for me to be asking questions? Trying to understand? So, all right, so that is the end of our time this evening. We will pick up here with question 8 and verses 31 through 37 next week, except, I think, are you taking over next week, Josh? Is that right? So Josh will pick up from there next week on question number 8. So I want to thank you all for your time and your attention. So I have a little something for you this evening. If you want to look in Numbers chapter 13, it'll be at the end of chapter 13 and the beginning of chapter 14. That's the only place I'll be. This is when the spies came back from Canaan to report to Moses and the people. If we look at Numbers chapter 13, verses 25 through 33, and they returned from spying out the land after 40 days. Now they departed and came back to Moses and Aaron and all the congregation of the children of Israel in the wilderness of Paran at Kadesh. They brought back word to them and to all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. Then they told him and said, we went to the land where you sent us. It truly flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. Nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land are strong. Their cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the south. The Hittites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites dwell in the mountains. And the Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the banks of the Jordan. Then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, let's go up at once and take possession, for we are well able to overcome it. But the men who had gone up with him said, we are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. And they gave the children of Israel a bad report of the land which they had spied out, saying, the land through which we have gone as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw in it are men of great stature. There we saw the giants, the descendants of Anak came from the giants, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight, and so we were in their sight. So if we look at the report here, if we look especially at verses like 28 through 33, and except for Caleb in verse 30, their whole report focuses on the strength of their opposition, what they see as the strength of their opposition. They went by what they could see, and they really chose to follow their fear when they saw these people. And that's where they get this, like, we were like grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. It's because they're afraid that they feel this way. But these men, these spies, they had all seen the same miracles that Caleb had seen, that Joshua had seen. They had experienced the same power of God out there before them this whole time. So why did they not agree with Caleb? They forgot God, or maybe did not trust God, and they left him out of their equation. When they were looking, kind of like when David is looking at Goliath that we're studying, but when they were looking at the enemy, they said, do we measure up to the enemy we face? And they answered themselves with a no. They did not trust God. They didn't include him in their equation, because if they had, they would have agreed with Caleb. They would have been like, yeah, we can go do this. It's not a problem. So all they saw when they were looking was the difficulties, how big these people were, how scary it was. And a lot of times when we're presented with a problem or an issue, especially something unknown or unexpected, we tend to have a bit of fear. We tend to respond that way. We react in that fear first. We're human. Sometimes that does happen, and we're going by what we see. But we want to see how these reports here were received. If we look at Numbers chapter 14, verses 1 through 4, so all the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the children of Israel complained against Moses and Aaron, and the whole congregation said to them, if only we had died in the land of Egypt, or if only we had died in this wilderness. Why has the Lord brought us to this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and children should become victims? Would it not be better for us to return to Egypt? And so, So they said to one another, let us select a leader and return to Egypt. Now all these people had also seen the same signs, seen God perform all the same miracles. You know, they had seen the power of God destroy the Egyptian army, split the sea, let them come through, and then wipe the other guys out. That would be pretty impressive and pretty convincing, but here they're ready to return to bondage, to slavery. Just because that would be easier. It would be easier. They felt that would be safer, less risky than to follow God and be free and stay free rather than believing in God. Freedom is not always safe, and it does require us to take responsibility, that we have to act properly and in faith. But how quickly they forgot the power of God and the grace of God and what he had done for them. If we look on in verses 5 through 9, then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces before all the assembly of the congregation of the children of Israel. But Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes. And they spoke to all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, the land we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord delights in us, then he will bring us into this land and give us a land which flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, nor fear the people of the land, for they are our bread. Their protection has departed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. So if you notice what Joshua and Caleb are telling the people, reminding them, reassuring them, encouraging them, the land is an exceedingly good land. God's promise, his blessing is excellent. If the Lord delights in us, if we trust and believe in God, we will have his blessing. Do not rebel against the Lord. Do not fear. The Lord is with us. But the people had forgotten the love of God, his mercy and his forgiveness. We look at verse 10. And all the congregation said to stone them with stones. And these are the guys that are encouraging you, trying to help you. And they're, these people are all upset. Anyway, so the congregation said to stone them with stones. Now the glory of the Lord appeared in the tabernacle of meeting before all the children of Israel. Had God not intervened, the mob would surely have killed them. They would have just, killed Caleb and Joshua right there. They would have killed them for their faith and their belief and for, of all things, encouraging them and trying to help them. Because their message didn't follow what the crowd was feeling, what the crowd wanted to hear. It didn't go along with their emotions. It didn't give in to the fear. So if we look at verse 11, then the Lord said to Moses, how long will these people reject me? And how long will they not believe me with all the signs which I have performed among them? I think the Lord is still asking that today. And, he's asking that of the world, but also of us. Do we forget the Lord? Do we forget his blessings and live in fear as if God is not with us? Because we see a lot of things in the world that can produce fear, and I understand that. There are things that are scary. But we should not fear the challenges of this life. We should not fear the things that are going on in the world, even though we can have real and difficult times. But remember that God is with us. He will guide us and protect us, and he will help us to overcome the obstacles we face. We can believe and trust in the Lord just like Joshua and Caleb and David, who we're studying. The Lord is a very real and present help in times of trouble. So maybe if anyone here is having any trouble in life, maybe if anything's got you down or feeling hopeless, sometimes we do have down times where we struggle. We have off days. If we're afraid of what we're seeing in the world, if you find yourself needing any help or wanting any prayers this evening, please come forward as we stand and as we sing.